A good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Dialogue. My name is Simapolo and it is time we look at those big stories in the week, put them into context, and the panel is ready to do exactly that. Welcome from a busy week and an eventful week. We can again celebrate women because it was International Women's Day celebrations and the national celebrations were held in Chiluhura district. We say happy Women's Day once again to all women out there. And it was time, or it is time, to look at the progress in women emancipation and all those bottlenecks or roadblocks that are still in the way to equality, gender equality. And in Uganda's case, I can say not many women are complaining. And well, with some few challenges withstanding, I don't think many women out there are really complaining. But it was sad to receive, and of course it is real, the passing of the Court of Appeal, Justice Kenneth Kakulu. Kakulu died this week and he is set to be buried today. And Justice Kenneth Kakulu, known as KK, is well known for his decision in the luring of 2017 during the move, which was actually successful, to amend the constitution and lift the age limit. He dissented. Among the five, only one, Kenneth Kakulu, dissented in that luring, but again the presidential age limit was lifted. Anyway, we will also possibly have a word or two from the panel on the legacy that Kakulu leaves behind. In Parliament, the Anti-Homosexuality Bill 2023 was tabled this week. A certificate of financial implication was also provided. Looks like it is smooth sailing. Looking at the zeal, the vigor, the charisma in members of Parliament, including the leadership of Parliament, the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, you get the feeling that this bill will not find resistance, and soon we may have this law passed, and we can only speculate what will happen next. Again, my attention was also drawn to the decision made by the Kenya Dairy Board when they issued a notice stopping or suspending powdered milk imports into Kenya. And well knowing that Kenya is part and a member state in the East African community, there have been voices saying that this contradicts the whole East African protocol, especially on free trade area and all that. And well, I also ask the panel to make a comment on this particular issue, what it means, and all that. But our main topic today will be again in Parliament. The ministers implicated in several irregularities, including abuse of office, corruption, they are not resigning. The Minister for Gender, Labour and Social Development, Honorable Betty Amongi, came to Parliament and vowed on the floor of Parliament that she is not going to resign, well after a report by the Select Committee investigating the irregularities in the management of NSSF implicated her, and it was adopted by the same Parliament this week. What does it mean? Ministers implicated in the Kalamoja Reef scandal are also not resigning. Even we had reports from the cabinet meeting that sat on Monday that indeed His Excellency the President, the chair of the executive, also, I mean, accused them, but no one is resigning. What does it mean to a growing democracy as Uganda? But let me introduce, with profound honor, Dr. Gerard Werihe Wanzara, a man from Namisindwa, and he is the head of research and civic engagement at Africa Leadership Institute, an NGO that oversees Parliament and other government bodies. Welcome to the program, Gerard. I'm happy to see you in that seat again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Apollo. Good morning, and good morning to our esteemed viewers. It's always good to be here every Saturday and to discuss, share ideas on issues that affect us. I'm also happy to see my fellow panelist, Richard, looking very good here. He's really looking an expert on what? On nutrition.
Yeah.
He needs to give me some lessons.
Yes.
Yeah.
How is the week and how is Namisindwa?
Namisindwa is fine, only that the noise is still too much regarding this. But people are particularly discussing the issue of the president. I was quoted asking Minister Nandu to in Lumasaba that are you thieves? So it's really embarrassing that the president had to go native. So that was the point of discussion on Namisindwa today.
That the president was asking her to provide the word.
The word, am I speaking the real word? Are you thieves? So she had to answer to the affirmative.
Yes, and
But did she say yes?
Yeah, she had to say no, she didn't say yes, but she said he was talking the truth. The statement
pleasure
was.
having you on the show this morning, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Well, with profound honor, I welcome you to the show once again, Richard.
Thank you very much. I need to remember the word babefu. Babefi. The president is playing his drama and theatrics, of course. Yeah. Let's see where this will end. Maybe that will tell us. But good morning. Good morning, our viewers. It's always a pleasure to be here. And as I always say, by the grace of God, we are here. The all-powerful, the almighty, and the all-gracious. My panelist colleague here, Dr. Werike, we shall discuss nutrition outside here. But you must be prepared for the discipline. Sometimes it's too much. But of course, thank you for provoking me. I think in this country, the people who have the technical mandate, they are those ones who are mandated by law and by regulation to take charge of nutrition matters. I think they are also playing games. Sometimes they play games with the lives of people. And I think this needs to be tackled seriously. But we are glad to be here.
How was the week?
I can't complain. I'm particularly gratified that you see, I'm Secretary General, founder Secretary General of something called the United Nations Association. And one of the things that made us start this organization slightly over 25 years ago was because we wanted to have ourselves then and other young people participate in global debates, global issues, global decision making. I mean, I have had my opportunities, but this week we are hosting a group of 20 young people from different places whom we are training to be UN delegates, and we are going to facilitate them to go to the UN General Assembly to have the voice of the youth there. So I'm particularly excited that what we are dreaming finally has come true.
Okay. Well, viewers, it's a pleasure. We've been joined by Mercy Grace Nanduru, and Grace is a governance expert. And Grace, welcome to the show once again, and I'm pleased to see you.
Thank you. It's the first time I'm seeing you this year, so
Okay.
Maybe I should say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Yes, and a good morning, viewers. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Wow. Well, viewers, it's time to roll on. And I don't know, we make a quick comment on Women's Day. We have a woman in the studios, and it is my pleasure. You speak first on matters of women emancipation. Before you stepped in, I said that I am certain not many women are complaining here in Uganda. Are you really complaining?
First, I'm very happy that on Women's Day actually happens to be my birthday.
No.
So I turned 35 on that day, and I'm grateful.
Wow.
Maybe there's a reason I was a woman and born on that day. Definitely, I congratulate all the women in Uganda and around the world upon the commemoration of this day. Definitely, we celebrate many strides that have been made in terms of women empowerment across the board, through policy, through practice, through empowerment. The fact that I'm able to even sit here on this show is not something I take for granted, because I know that there were women who came before me and paved the way for me to be here. And perhaps my mother had to overcome so much to ensure that I study and get to a level where I'm confident enough to share this space. But that's not to say that we are anywhere close to where we should be. In any case, we are still extremely far from where we should be in terms of empowerment. Empowerment being the ability of somebody who ordinarily could not make informed choices, now making these choices, is something that is a privilege to so many people, even as I speak today, in so many spheres of life. Including even for myself, who is educated, who serves in an institution as a leader. There are still so many barriers that we have to overcome when it comes to empowerment. People think that empowerment is really more about, the fact that now we have rights enshrined in our law, the fact that you can see women leaders all around us. That's just part of it. It's beyond what we say into also what we do, creating systems that actually promote this. Just as you were starting the show, you were speaking about some women in leadership and some of the issues that are happening around us. You'll find that there are many women in positions of power, but they cannot make decisions. They're the face of power, but decision making is not theirs to do. And there are also systems that have to enable women's participation. We have so many challenges around women in the labor market, issues around negotiating wages. Until now, there's an equal pay in the labor market. Largely, most of the women are in the informal sector, and this is a sector that is largely liberalized. And so there are a lot of issues there. We still have high levels of domestic violence. These are barriers to women's effective participation in processes. We also do have issues around, the economics, basically. How do women participate in the marketplace? Do women have access to resources? Do they own resources? Do women, for example, own land? Will we say with confidence that today in Uganda, majority of women own land? No, the percentage is so small. But you find, for example, the agricultural sector is made up 70% of women. And so if the predominant player in that field cannot actually own these resources, it means that even your access to, say, credits is very limited, because you need to give a collateral. And so if you do not own a productive asset, chances are that you cannot easily access a loan or credit to boost your business. How about the digital space? And the theme this year really was resonating around, how issues around access to digital spaces are. But we're in a country where we have very high taxes levied on internet. There are platforms like Facebook, as we speak, that are suspended in this country, but they're big market. Facebook has the biggest market in Africa, and so a woman who is doing business would probably thrive in that space by marketing their goods better. But how many women are able to pay the taxes required for them to access this digital space? How many of them have knowledge? Do we have, laws that acknowledge where the world is shifting existing now, and therefore are enabling for that level of empowerment in terms of the economy. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we celebrate the strides that we've made thus far.
There's still a lot of work to do, she says. Richard?
I think the theme was embrace equity. And then specifically, I think it was focused on ICT. You see, because of being in the UN association, there are so many UN days that we have to pay attention to, that it is possible that you can have a flattening relationship with the day. And so when I read around the day, first, it is important, I think, very, very important, to celebrate achievements.
Yeah, true.
It is very easy, especially for human beings, to forget to celebrate achievements. And sometimes that does not adequately reward the very, very, very hard efforts that the four mothers, not really four fathers, of the movement had to put in to reach where we are. Because for them, their contexts were much more difficult. Imagine March 8th, 1857 is when I was reading that the women who were textile workers in the United States actually marched. It was later that I think a leader in one of the parties in Germany, somebody, Clara, said this one, reading from that history, we have to institutionalize and have this one day. So sometimes we don't celebrate those efforts so much and get them to inform us why they stepped out to push. Now, equity. So you see, in the beginning, I remember we were talking about equality. Then we moved to equity. It's critical that we keep asking ourselves, what are we talking about? What are the contexts that the different women are? One time there was a huge conference here. I was asked to do a documentary and documentation for that conference. It was called the Women's World's Congress. And then I asked them, I said, why worlds? Because I wanted to understand if you're going to do a documentary. And they said the many leaders of the women empowerment movement in the world, men and women, they were saying, you have to reflect on the different contexts, because then you need different investments to create equity for our girls and women. And you want to start right from the beginning. Right from the beginning. I think that's important. So for me, celebrate the efforts. I think that is critical.
Yeah.
And when I look at my sisters and I look at the females around me and I think about our mothers, I think there is something to celebrate. I think our mothers did so much to lift us where we are. Then, make sure that there is energized effort to drive the equity process. Because I think that there is so much to be done. And every time you keep getting, things keep coming up that to remind you that there is so much work to be done. Things keep coming up and you're thinking, okay, we thought we had left that space. We thought we had moved beyond that. And so there is, one of the things I talk about is, we say we are exporting labor, and I'm a promoter, I am a proponent of labor externalization. And so we are saying we are exporting labor. I've worked outside myself, but when I compare with my working and the returns and the current externalization, it's very gender monodirectional.
Oh.
Yeah, it's only the
Many
girls.
more women
it's
are
only the
girls.
girls who are going, and the boys unemployed. So what is it that is taking the girls into slavery, and the boys are not going? Yeah, what is that? And
So there could be a problem here.
Not there could. There must be
Okay.
a problem, and we need to deal with those things, because sometimes it's just one case of a person who has been mistreated, and all of us, I am a journalist, we all go there temporarily, and then we forget. Because so for me, Women's Day finally is every day.
Okay.
Yes.
One comment on what she alluded to, that the women are only faces of leadership, and that they do not take part in decisions. Do you agree? That I think she was drawing a distinction between participation and effective participation. I don't know.
No, but if you're talking about governance in Uganda, how many of us are effectively participating in anything in the leadership and the governance? I think yeah. So we have to ask those questions. Let me tell you the questions I was asking, and I was looking at the lineup in Sanga on the day. In the front line, you had the president, the first lady, who is Minister of Education and things. You had the vice president and her husband. You had the Speaker of Parliament, the husband who was seated somewhere else. And you had the Prime Minister. So if you look at that from the visuals, it looks excellent. Now, how much power or decision-making, effective decision-making capacity did that front line have? So for me, Women's Day is an everyday day.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Gerard, pick up from there.
I will not repeat what I've said, except congratulating the women. And of course, agreeing with him that it's important that we take note of the achievements. It has been a long journey. But I will comment in a number of aspects. Right now, okay, we introduced UPE and USE to bring about equity, to ensure that both girls and boys access education. Now, the statistics in primary school are showing that the completion rate is only 38%. And if you look at, now you break down the other percentage that is disappearing along the way, the biggest number is the girl child. So we don't know really how much we are doing to ensure, because those are all efforts aimed at derailing, okay, the progress of a woman in this country. The same also applies to USE, Universal Secondary Education. And then if you go to representation, say at parliament level, affirmative action was designed to ensure that one, more women access these positions in parliament of leadership, and then they are also able to become advocates of the other ladies. But as you know, we have been analyzing this in parliament. What percentage do female MPs spend advocating or discussing issues to do with the gender equality, to do with other women? We found that is very little, very little. Actually, when they arrive there, they get lost into other things, or they're actually captured by other interests, and then they forget the constituency that they are representing. Now, there are also areas like Karamoja, for instance, where a woman has to move 30, 40 kilometers to get access to water and take the water back to the children. So what we are seeing is that, yes, we have these faces, but really the issues that affect a woman are still a problem. You talked about effective participation. We know that politics has been monetized. And it is very hard for women to compete with men at various levels of leadership. So these are issues that we are seeing in society. But of course, we can meet in Sanga and celebrate and see all these people. But then there's a lot we need to do.
But even in Sanga, I think there is a several billion fund that was launched and that was pushed into women empowerment through skills and into entrepreneurship initiatives. I think that partly answers your your question.
Yeah, it answers, but of course we also have a challenge. Now we are seeing women at the front line of corruption. So the fund can be there, but will it really achieve the intended purpose? If we don't address also issues of corruption, then we are really, if you go to like Karamoja, I can tell you, and the other upper part of Teso, that's Katakwi, Kapela Byong, and so forth, the people you find looking for grass and climbing on the roof to roof are actually women who roof those huts. So the men are busy drinking ajono, and the women are the ones suffering. So if a woman is involved in stealing iron sheets, is actually sentencing a fellow woman who is supposed to receive those maybe 20 iron sheets to suffering. So these things are interconnected. If we don't address them, then all our efforts will be watered down.
Actually, you brought out one intriguing question. Like for the case of Karamoja, which you have alluded to, isn't it right to also empower that man instead of focusing on empowering only a woman?
No, if you look at the budgets in Karamoja, what they have been doing, if they say iron sheets to vulnerable households, those households have both women and men. And also, if you look at other interventions like goats rearing to the Karachunas, they move away. The men are the ones who are more involved in violence, stealing cows and things like that. So the assumption is that if these goats are given, then they will abandon the violence and get empowered and take care of their homes. But also, maybe we need to review the interventions to find out if they are really effective or not. Because, I mean, if you distribute those exotic looking goats in a very arid condition like Karamoja, then also the conflict, you find they are stolen or they are dead. So at the end of the day,
my concern, I don't know, it's looking at if and it is specifically on what you said. If we have communities, and it's not only Karamoja, I know that even you know communities all over, where men wake up early in the morning and they go for drinking and doing all sorts of things. And if we focus on empowering the woman, and we do not also look at how we help this man.
But last time we talked here about the issues of mindset change. That one is also lacking, because you find that right now the so-called the parish chiefs and the state agencies in those areas are really very weak. I narrated to you how my grandfather was a chief,
the other time when
and would
they
go with the local
rounded up
police and round up
those who are drinking in the morning are rounded up.
And they are tied. You find one rope is tying like 20 men, escorting them to lock them up. And the next day they're in the gardens.
We must be serious about it.
So there is somewhere absence of state authority.
Okay, and we now give us a recap of the Women's Day, especially from what you've heard from these two gentlemen.
Yeah, I think we have agreed on several points, and I think moving forward, I keep saying that the concept of wanting to advance women's rights and empower them is driven by so many things. And in our context, sometimes when things are happening in the world, now they say they want, gender mainstreaming across budgets, we'll jump on it. They will say this equity is now at the center of global discussions, we'll jump on it. But how much do we internalize this concept and actually believe in it, so as to create systems to ensure that it is effective, that we see it reflected in how we do things? And part of it is addressing corruption, for example, because you cannot create a system that does not enable decision making and that promotes impunity and you think you'll succeed. You cannot roll out a program which looks very good on paper, but you do not invest in mindset change. You do not invest in creating systems that will promote equal decision making at that level, and that through our construction projects and all these other projects, livelihood projects and what that are being piloted, which look very good and which are very good initiatives, and think that without addressing the patriarchal issues at community level, even at this level where we are, these trends that continue without addressing them, these programs can never be effective. They can be there, but you'll find women will not access them. And I can tell you, working in civil society, for example, you can organize a training, and you take it for granted that women are just going to show up. If it is the time for planting, they will not. So you have to take steps. If you want them to participate, you have to take steps to ensure either you bring the trainings closer to them, or you adjust the time, or you're deliberate about who you target so that they participate. But you don't take it for granted that I have this rosy program that is targeting women, and women are just going to show up. There are many factors that may limit a woman's participation in these processes. So we need to move from just the theory and the narratives to actually ensuring that we now invest in creating systems that promote what we talk about, especially if we're serious about advancing women's rights. And I must emphasize that it's very important for development. And for a country like ours, it's proven that in countries where issues of empowerment are prioritized, their level of development is very different from the ones that do not.
If I may ask you, from your own assessment, do you think we are serious about women empowerment as a country?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
Well, looks like there's a long way to go. And now I have to retract my earlier statement, women are still complaining. We have only like 15 minutes, but we have to make comments on these. I think there are salient topics here. The passing of somebody who has been described as an enigma in his own right, Kenneth Kakuru. I don't know, Richard, make a comment.
No. The problem for me is I don't see Kakuru as a judge. No, for me, Kakuru is the other young man who was in university and driving his sister's car and coming to pick his niece and nephew from school. That is the way I remember him, because we come from the same place. And his niece and nephew, the dad had been murdered by Amin, unfortunately. And so he's the one who used to drive to come, very nice car, to come and pick these kids. I remember even the color. So for me, that's the Kakuru I remember. And I remember Kakuru because then as his legal, I would tell him how we used to admire him, very handsome, guy. And we would say, we want to go to Makerere, and like that. So for me, that's the enduring image that stays in my head. And then we came to when we started the tobacco fight, the anti-tobacco fight. I think him and the Justice Council Karugaba, they had what they called the TEAN, the Environmental Action Network or something like that. So when he became judge, I would say, oh, now you're boss, we have no business. So, and he was a very warm and fun guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, that's the guy I remember. But also, I think I had a bit of preparation for his demise. Because then I knew he was unwell. Over the years, I knew he was unwell when he wanted to retire from the judiciary and the powers that be were, thinking he should still try. And of course at the tennis court. So this thing of judge for me is not the one that plays out in my mind when I'm thinking about.
Okay, but from that, from his service and the legacy that has been drawn around him.
No, for me, he's been what can I say? A rebellious. I think he's a rebellious fellow. I think he's a guy who has rebellion in him. He's a guy who had a deep sense of going for the powerful ones who have impunity. He really had that. You could see that sense of him. He wants to go for those so-called powerful
makes him
ones.
unique.
Yes, absolutely.
In his own way.
And he really didn't fear. Because we know that the systems in my home country here, my beloved Uganda, are very much corrupted and manipulated, and I think he stood and withstood too many pressures to make the decisions that he made. The one thing he told me at least about his drive in the judiciary was to reduce the backlog. I think he always felt pain
the case backlog.
by the backlog. So those, but otherwise for me, I never discussed him. And there's another judge who was retired. I don't want to talk. Retired early. I don't want to say his name. But those two, we would, you know, talk. We talk quite. And then, you know, I think he had this sense that he had to push justice. You must have the courage to face the powerful who usually want to manipulate and abuse systems.
Doctor, what do you make of KK's legacy?
I think when I look back and during his time on the bench, he reminds me of Justice John Bosco Katusi.
Okay.
The emotion, the vigor with which they would question people, and the manner in which they gave their rulings, actually is very similar. And of course, he had the capacity to withstand this pressure. I remember his daughter recently was when we were having the session to pay respects to him.
Oh.
The daughter said that she last helped him to type a ruling 2 weeks back. Even when he was very sick, he wanted this ruling to go, and then this case is disposed. So it confirms what he's saying, that he really never wanted the backlog in terms of, you know, because the justice delayed is justice denied. I have a friend who has been had a very simple case with one of the serving RDCs in the country. It was a very minor case, but it has taken so far 4 years. Wow. Every time they're walking to Uganda Road Court, I'm even wondering what they're still doing there. So when I look at such cases, something that can be had in 1 day, and then you close the next day and have a ruling, has taken over 4 years. The person who was taken to court is really disgusted. He doesn't want to continue going there, but he has to go because of the consequences. So I credit him for that. But I also look at the late Justice as an activist, because when he did a law firm before becoming a judge, most of his cases involved in the environment. And so he was an environment activist. And even in court, actually you would see that activism in him. Like the case of the age limit in Mbale. He was so passionate about what he was talking, and his ruling, he almost even punched the air when he was given his ruling. So I saw him as an activist.
Yeah. Grace, do you think he's one among a few? He has been described, I mean, his service has been described as, I mean, his personality has been described as fearless, authoritative, and the whole legacy is of a man who the bench will lose. I mean, will miss.
Yeah, I think as a lawyer, I have a very different picture of him with great admiration. One of the concepts that we crave for in the legal profession, especially at a time such as now, is judicial activism. Believing that you are called, that you're called to duty, and that you owe a certain responsibility to the people that you serve. It's very easy in the times we're living in now for people to perceive positions as transactions, as money-making ventures, and therefore allow themselves to be, you know, moved away from what is actually their calling. I believe the late Justice Kakuru believed he was called. He believed in social justice, and that was reflected in everything he did. One of the very fond times that I remember, I was at FIDA a couple of years ago, I think over 4 years ago, and by then the issues of climate change were not as pronounced as they are today. But at that time, he was already preparing ground. He could already recognize the dangers to environment. He was already progressively and proactively moving towards ensuring that we protect the environment. that goes to show you a person who is aware of the environment, but also using their influence positively to try and salvage what is left. And that is not something you find very commonly today.
Yeah.
And if he were like, right now, if you speak about climate change, anybody will take it up because that is where resources are. So people will take it up because they see it as a money-making venture. But by the time somebody like him of his caliber, who had seen it all, who had access to positions of power, was already thinking and moving towards this, for me, goes to show the character of who he was.
Okay.
But also beyond that, he always stood for the truth. He always took the side of justice. It didn't matter whether he was the minority in that space. He stood for what was right and without fear. And he was willing to lay down his life for what he believed was right. And I think more than ever before, we need people like him.
Wow.
We mourned him because we kept feeling like the good ones go. We needed him. So it's a challenge for me and for you and for so many people who are in positions of power. And it's very amazing that a good person, even after he's gone, he's spoken about. What people remember him for in this moment is the things he has done. And I think that's a challenge to our leaders today. If you're not here today, are people going to celebrate your passing? What will people remember about you? Will they remember you just as a judge who passed away, but or as a judge who used his position to speak for social justice and stand up for what is right? I think for me that has been my challenge throughout the week. I was thinking, wow, what a man. Like every space you go to, people are speaking positively about him. People who know him personally, not even from the legal aspect, are speaking differently about him.
I don't know what the supporters of NRM and what are speaking about him. I don't know.
I've not read very many things from them, but I think even them, they recognize
Me, I'm
some of
I'm not to
them.
support the NRM. But
Great.
I am perhaps even worse. I am a Museveniist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now what do you...
I have just spoken about him.
Yeah.
Even President Museveni himself
Yeah.
sent his message there.
Oh.
And President Museveni is known to that family quite well.
Okay, supporters of age limit lifting. Those who supported
What
the
happened with age limit? I don't even remember.
He dissented. And
Yeah.
Oh,
He
he
had a
dissented.
dissenting view.
But really, many of us dissented.
Yeah.
Well, it is the
As,
dialogue.
by the way, in Imbale, during that ruling, he was on the same bench with the current Chief Justice,
Oh,
Winnie Dolo.
Alfonso Winnie-Dolo.
Exactly, and of course they gave different rulings, but you saw he was speaking very positively about him,
Yeah.
including saying that he convinced him not to retire because he thought he was going to sell all his property in order to treat himself. And he said the judiciary and the government of Uganda spent about 800 million to treat him. So you can see it's sort of different from the justice who is having running battles with the Chief Justice, the lady Justice Chisachi.
You wonder, because it is a time when we hear of cadre judges and I don't know.
And you see, like he has said, you can be a cadre, but also do what is right.
Really?
I think that's the difference. That's why.
But that's what cadreship means.
Yes.
Oh.
Because being a cadre does not mean that you agree
That's the real
to
meaning.
everything. You must. No. Actually, if I've studied quite a bit of the history of NRM, when they got Uganda in a space where we're not stable, and they were the proponents of democracy and good governance, and so the values upon which this party we see today was founded were those values of good governance, values of social justice and democracy. So at any time, if the party is going away, or if elements within the party are trying to go away from this, the cadres who know where this party came from and what it was founded on will always stand up for what is right. And it doesn't make them less of cadres. And for me, I think that is where I draw my lines for respect for certain very strong cadres. They will proudly associate with the NRM party, but they will not be afraid to pronounce themselves on issues that they know to be right.
So you have a strong cadre next to you, possibly, you mean?
No, let me tell you, Apple. I think we need to distinguish cadreship from sycophancy.
Oh.
Yeah, I think when people talk about sycophants as cadres, I think it's a misrepresentation. It's a misunderstanding.
Thank you so much.
Of the whole concept.
Viewers, we go for a short break.
Sycophant has no value.
It is the dialogue. We are still coming with several other topics, but our main focus will be the state of governance in this country. We have many ministers implicated at this moment, implicated in cases of corruption, abuse of office, influence peddling and all others, but they are still stuck to their guns. They are not going anywhere, and I don't know what that means. This is the dialogue. My name is Tim Apollo. On the panel this morning, we have Grace Mase Munduru, and she is a governance expert. A strong member of the civil society in Uganda, and Richard Baguma, a regular panelist, a strong advocate for proper nutrition, but he's also a communications expert. We have Dr. Gerard Werehe Wanzara, and Wanzara is a man from Namisindwa, the researcher at Africa Leadership Institute, and we're looking at those big stories that made the week. From Women's Day, we looked also at the death, the passing of the Court of Appeal Justice Kenneth Kakuru. Now we have 1-2 stories to make a comment on, and then we move on to our main topic. Gerard, let's straight away look at the anti-homosexuality bill was tabled in Parliament this week. I talked about the vigor, the charisma in members, even the speaker, and I was saying it won't take long that this law will be passed, and we can only speculate what will happen later, but just a comment, because we discussed it last week. Just a comment and we move on.
This law, to me, it is very necessary, because what started as jokes in the country, we are seeing, we are seeing people who are really involved in these things openly. It turned out that actually the PMM lady is not simply a teacher, she's actually a deputy head teacher, and was allegedly living with a woman as a partner in the house. So these things are going on, and for us as a country, I think we need to have a strict way of dealing with them, because if we don't, yesterday I was just reading DW news from Germany, and the German Catholic Church is also now entering into blessing same-sex marriages, and I think they have given it a roadmap up to 2026. Of course, also the other aspect in their roadmap is to discourage celibacy for priests. But the issue of blessing marriages actually triggered me to come and read again. What's marriage? Marriage used to be defined even on internet as a union between a man and a woman. Now they have distorted the definition to accommodate. They are saying two people who are willing and of sound mind to live together as married people. But so it is unnatural. But then you remember last week we said we need to evaluate what made the other law collapse. When Andrew Mwenda and Fox Odoi went to court. So we need to ensure that those gaps that made it to collapse, like quorum, are not those mistakes are not repeated.
The speaker has emphasized that several times.
Yes, and also, like, I think Richard is the one who hinted on it last week, that we don't need to leave the leaders to move alone on this, the population, because definitely the majority, maybe in Uganda, I've not done a survey, but maybe 99% should be against homosexuality. Because if you see the reactions where people are suspected, you see that there's anger in society. Okay? Now, but what we should expect after passing it, of course, there is going to be fight back. So it's going to be quite hard. First, it has been branded as a human right. And so a human right is universal. But for us, what I liked about the bill is that it is strong on those who promote. Okay? Do you see people, we all get married, but do you see people going to promote, you get married now, you know? But these minority who are doing a wrong thing, which is actually biblical and culturally wrong and a sin, are trying to promote it.
Okay.
So there should be heavy punishment on those who promote, who design these materials to make it look attractive, those who finance. For me, that is where the focus should be.
Okay.
And also those who commit like child rape. There are those who, I read an article, I think in the Monitor this week, it happened in Nansana, where a teacher and two other people sodomized a young man of 17 years old. So, first of all, he's a minor and he is being gang raped by men. So, such people should be actually prosecuted and given very hard sentences.
Richard, you may not go into what he said, but you can look at the vigor, especially in the leadership of Parliament. Several videos have been making rounds, and she's very, very. Actually, some of them are saying, she shouldn't be. I mean, participating in the debate. She's a moderator. She's the leader. She should be leading the debate, but not actively. I mean, pushing the House to take a direction.
I would be surprised if the law didn't pass. I know there are very, very vigorous efforts and very powerful international voices who are pushing against this bill. You know, I am in the United Nations Association, and this is very difficult for Uganda's diplomats. This is extremely difficult for Uganda's diplomats. For example, online, I belong to a rights group that is pushing to have 2.5 million signatures globally to get the leaders of the EU, the US, and whatever to push hard against Uganda.
Really?
Yes.
Already they are?
Yes, right now it is going on. And it is one of those petitions, forget the other ones of climate change, which they
and
put.
eco.
This is the one that is getting the fastest signatures.
Wow.
Yes, as quickly as possible. I have got calls. I don't know how many. Because we had a meeting online. I was addressing a Women's Day commemoration. There is a global movement to support women in Africa, particularly by women in the diaspora, but elsewhere. And cheekily, the moderator, and I had said, please don't bring this matter up. I don't want to be involved in this debate. And then she mentioned, oh, it comes from Uganda, And my position is a bit difficult because I'm the global vice chair for the executive committee for the World Federation of UN Associations. So the pushback, I have seen communication from the diplomats who are based here, from some of the most powerful countries. You know,
the pressure is on already.
The pressure is very tough. What I think will happen is the Parliament really has an appetite to pass this, unless the forces that are pushing now find a way of dampening that. I am not sure, but what I also think will happen is that the law cannot be implemented.
Oh
no, I think even if it's passed, it
won't
can't be implemented. You see. For Uganda to have an argument, there has to be absolutely overwhelming voices and a stand that for this. Now, let me tell you why the stand will not come. Usually, the people who stand for causes and are loudest is civil society. I belong to civil society. We receive money from those countries whose governments
support.
Well, they are unable not to, because of the push of the movements and lobby groups in their countries. So, and you see, whether the money comes directly from those governments or through their aid agencies, the USAID, the DFID, the DANIDA, they're the ones who give us money. Many times they give us money through the bigger NGOs. So it's the government through the development agency and the international NGO which partners with us. We lose teeth.
Oh.
So you won't see civil society here pushing. No happy. They will go there and swim around and dodge these issues. So because the country, the diplomats, the government cannot argue that we have absolute pressure from our populations pro this, then the governments get into trouble, the real governors. And you see, in the economic times in which we are, the government is very, very mindful not to annoy the people who give it
aid.
Yeah, who give it money. So the civil society is fearful not to annoy the people. So many times the one who pays the piper starts calling the tune. That's the dilemma that this country is in. And we are going to see it play out. We saw it play out the other time. How could my brother, Andrew Mwenda, and my other brother, Fox Sodoy, be the ones to shoot down
the same
a law that the president has put on combat and going to sign in front of cameras? Many bills we don't see that he has signed. He just signs and returns them. Because of the politicalness on this. So we have to be aware of those movements, and we have to prepare. I can tell you these lawyers are going to go to court.
So those who were thinking it's a done deal. There's a lot of support from the clergy, from the parliament and MPs. They have to wait.
But some of the clergy have been having different voices, actually, on this matter.
Mercy, what do you think? And what do you see?
Well, I think they've said it all. From where I sit, the debate on this matter is driven by different issues. I think Uganda is still a very strong faith-driven country. And so most of the conversations we're having are from a place of morality. That's why you see arguments from a point of religion, arguments from a point of culture and things like that, because people seem to be very aligned and entrenched in certain aspects. But also, when now you look at the other side, the development side, the conversation is driven by different things, like Richard has explained, where the world is moving to, how resources are made, where human rights is going. And so these are two conflicting. The world is moving away from these faith-driven conversations now to, saying that countries are secular. So they should be handled that way. That's why you see a contrast in Kenya, where in the Penal Code Act, homosexuality is outlawed, but the Supreme Court is allowing NGOs to register. So that is where the overlap happens.
Actually, even the deputy president, this week, Richard Gashagwa, also made a strong statement against homosexuality.
Exactly. So now but the Supreme Court has now made that's the highest court of the land. So you can do nothing about it at this point. And that being that's just an example. So for us, coming back to Uganda, I think most of what has been running through my mind, first of all, is I've been looking at the vigor, the speed with which this conversation is going, the moral justifications for it, but also questioning there are very many morally wrong things happening in our society, and the fact that we do not put as much effort in them as we're putting in homosexuality. And for me, one of the things that I've believed since this conversation began is that we actually have the will to do things when we are determined to do so. But we selectively choose what we put this zeal into. And I wish we really united the way we are doing against impunity as well, against corruption, against passing laws on inequality and other very critical aspects of this country, that we should use the same moral measure to take away everything we consider immoral out of our system, but not be hypocritical about it in how we front our arguments. So for me, I've been learning that things are actually possible, that we can unite on something and push and bring it to fruition. And so, yeah.
Okay, I also wish this whole push should be directed towards corruption.
Yes, and so many other evils as well. Yeah.
Okay, and quick comment on Kenya's decision. I'm sorry, I have picked very many topics, Dr. Wele. One comment and a brief one on Kenya's decision to ban powdered milk imports. Does it speak of how Kenya looks at the East African community thing? I mean, are they shooting themselves in the foot? What do you think?
First of all, Apple, it's not the first time that we are having this trade blockade by a fellow ESC member. You know that in the last about 2 years, we had the issues of course, milk, which was not powdered yet, the normal milk. We also had issues too with poultry. And then we also had the politics around the sugar, the sugar industry. Uganda's
Even
sugar
grain.
being blocked, and grain being blocked from going to Kenya, and grain. So I'm not surprised. And then President Ruto, while addressing his top brass after being sworn in, I remember a video circulating where he was saying, what is wrong with us processing our own milk, adding value, and exporting, therefore making more money, and then consuming this milk, Ugandan milk, fresh Ugandan milk, cheaply in Kenya. So for me, what they have done is just an operationalization of what President Ruto said. Yes, because he said, let's process ours, add value, export, and earn more money. Let's open up the market for the cheap fresh milk for Uganda. We consume it very cheaply. Then we shall be happy we are drinking, but we're also exporting processed milk. So there's actually nothing much. But what they are doing probably is good for
them,
for their country. But of course, it comes back to the ESC protocol. It's not the only one that is not being followed. We have been following areas where different countries are having different positions on this. But I believe the heads of state will talk. It will take time as they buy time, but it will go on as they wish it. I'm not seeing them changing this position right now.
But like we said, or like you indicated, it's not the first time. If it is not milk, it is grain. If it's not grain, it is eggs or what. Kenya's position now, Kenya's stand on the process, the road to integration. Don't you think that undermines the whole thing?
It is not only Kenya. Even Tanzania had issues. You remember when we wanted to fast track the political federation. Tanzania's issue was about land. When they hear about the chaos in Uganda, of land grabbing, evictions, and lack of proper, policy on land, they got scared. They said, these Ugandans want to come for our land. And in the majority of Tanzania said, no, we should hold on this. So it's not only Kenya, but we're going to see this playing. Integration takes a long time, and indeed it has taken a long time. But we're going to see these contradictions from time to time.
Richard, what do these contradictions mean?
For me, I think there's you see, the instructions are not communicated through video clips. No, I think instructions are communicated to technocrats, at least, to those people when they don't want to do something, or when they are shielding their positions, they will ask for written. Where did the president write? Where is the president's directive? They will. And so a couple of things I think are happening. One, you see why I found particularly that directive suspect. Because the directive is futuristic and speculative in nature. It said because we anticipate that the rains are going to come and we are going to have a lot of milk. Really, this person who is in the, I don't remember who signed it, how can they be very sure that the rains are going to come?
The Kenya Diary Board.
And they will have a lot of milk. So there are other factors. I have had, let me tell you what I have had, and I have no evidence of this, so I am rumor mongering for that, but One, that the company that exports this milk, this company which is based here, it was asked to oil some people, and it was not forthcoming.
In Kenya?
Yes, in Kenya. And so then they raised issues about it. That's one. Two, I have heard that at least I know that when I'm in Kenya, my sister, this is the milk she buys particularly. I have heard that the brand has become popular. Yes. And it has become a strong competitor to particularly the very powerful people in the creameries industry in Kenya. They're very, very powerful and very entrenched. So they hit things technically. And they were saying, you know, even when you write this, you will immediately stop the importation. So you start taking, because of the absence of the brand on the shelves, then you take it away. And then people start going back to the other brands. And they know that the decision-making processes are slow. So where you have a ministerial decision and then it's communicated, you have both time and you can promote. That was the other one. And the third one was that even where the pronouncements were made that these, you know, things, they are not communicated. That the East African ministers will go meet, but their decisions are not curated and communicated to the technocrats. So the technocrats do what they want to do for the reasons they don't want to do it until they get pressure to change that. What I actually think is that it is difficult to actually stop the products of Uganda going to Kenya, or I think, or theirs to come here. I think it's very difficult. My personal experience with this particular milk is that that's what we use at home. And when we migrated to Addis Ababa, we couldn't find this milk there. So we would carry it every time we went. Then a clever Kenyan businessman took the product as Kenyan. So now it comes to Ethiopia as Kenyan because we're having these barriers with Ugandan products. So we now find it on the shelf. So you have...
it will find its way.
Absolutely. So you have all these, the problem is you create barriers and it becomes slightly more expensive than the competition. So I think for me, it's these issues of underhand, of competition, of yeah, you know, but not because you expect that the rains will be good and then you get more milk. No, that I think is...
It was a flimsy
I think it's flimsy.
excuse.
But like Dr. Wanzara says, the barriers, even in a place like the European Union, where you have had this cooperation for a long time and even more strongly codified, will still come up. What I call pseudo-nationalism does not generally go away. No, it takes so long. The borders that were created by somebody in Berlin in I don't know, 1881, still lead us. For whatever other reasons we may have, they still lead us. So these things will keep coming up, flaring up, as we try to concretize our East African
and don't they affect the road to integration?
No question about it. No question about it. In fact, I would be surprised if we did not have a bumpy road to integration, that it would be very smooth. Human beings don't work like that. We don't move away from where, and that's where we came from, patriarchal societies, artificial borders, that ones that who comes from the border and speaks exactly the same language, they share the same names with the people across. They still see themselves as different. So,
Mercy,
they're entrenched.
I want to pick your opinion on the issue.
Yeah, I think, first of all, according to me, that statement was very dishonest. The reason was very dishonest. But also why? Because this is not new. If it is not eggs, it is grain. If it is not grain, it is milk. And before what we saw on March 6th, already there were challenges even in the previous government, but they were not just openly talked about. There was actually hope that when Ruto comes, there will be an ease. And because of the quality, but also the costs associated with milk that was imported from Uganda, it outmarketed what the Kenyan traders were dealing with. So this is really a retaliation and something that is influenced by the trade unions there, people that deal in milk and the traders. So it's from a place of dishonesty. But also looking at it from a strategic perspective, it really does violate some of the protocols that guide our relationship as the East African region. You know, the common first of all, just looking at the East African, you know, policies around trade,
free marketing,
the free movement of goods, even the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, which really is one of the instruments that has been driven by the East African community and has gained a lot of popularity within the countries. So moves like this take us backwards at a point when we are trying to integrate, at a point where, and trade is one of those easiest ways through which we can walk the talk of integration. So moves like this come from a place of dishonesty, in my opinion, really undo the gains and the efforts that have been made to ensure that we build integration, not just as a region, but also Africa as a continent. So I really hope that in their wisdom, the heads of state reason this beyond the petty influence of these associations, but to think about the bigger picture. Because if this sets a very bad precedence and a precedence for the region, and countries start to, you know, pass these kinds of ad hoc policies banning trade from one country, banning imports from one country to the other, we'll be killing ourselves within the region. So I really feel that this should be reasoned from a more strategic perspective. We need to reflect why we agreed to certain trade policies, and also why we have passionately been pushing for certain continental policies around trade. We must go back and think about why we came to that place. And if we can agree on why we came to that place, then you will want to undo things like this. And Kenya is our closest neighbor. So it's in their best interest that we actually salvage our relationship and ensure that, you know, we can harmoniously live with one another. Yeah.
From your submissions, I also feel it is very dishonest, because we have relied on Kenyan imports for a very long time. We have supported them if it means support. And from what Baguma said, if this product has outcompeted theirs, possibly they should swallow their humble pie and let.
Yeah, the dishonest is really disheartening, because if you look at the politics now of sugarcane in Busoga and the poverty, the cause comes from our
Kenya, exactly.
Because people entered this sector in anticipation of the market. You go to Mumiasi, where they are turning this sugarcane into spirit and things like that. So if you close, where do the Basoga take the sugarcane? They can't eat it. So
it's unfortunate. Well,
then the issue of Tanzania, a few years back, when we were allowed in the swamps, we increased our rice production. We really had excess rice, and then we looked Tanzania for market. Tanzania blocked all our rice. Now that we don't have rice, after chasing people from the wetlands, so now that the rice is coming one way from Tanzania, so the borders are open. So hypocrisy.
Now I think those roadblocks testify to the big job that our leaders and everyone has to do in pushing for integration and actuating the protocols and the whole idea of East African community.
It must be more action driven. And I think, you know, when you see the heads of state deliberating about integration, you see a certain sense of direction and interest from the heads of state. But now when you see things like this, it really communicates the need for action, that we should walk the talk. Yeah, we cannot say one thing and then act the other way.
Mase, I request you to kick off this discussion about ministers who are stuck in office even when committee reports have recommended that they quit, they resign.
I was hoping that we don't get to this topic, because I am going to try and manage my emotions. I really think that, you know, this is the lowest in terms of morality we have sunk. And in fact, for me, even when the debate on homosexuality was happening, it was also at the same time when we were battling with the issue of endemic corruption, which has become normalized. I was telling somebody the other day that for me this is wickedness, because it's wickedness, because you cannot find the right words to term it. As ministers, they wouldn't have to even wait for Parliament to debate this matter. They needed to, in my opinion, just resign on their own and step back and allow the processes to ensue while they have stepped back. But I also believe that they are driving this confidence from somewhere. Because for a very long time, we've seen large-scale scandals, bigger than this, happening. And the perpetrators are still actively serving. And so the confidence to continue to admit, first of all, that indeed I participated, but then also still continue to serve and give us an apology that does not take away the impact of your action on the people that deserve this, for me is the issue, the impunity. But also the head of state, where ministers have not voluntarily resigned. I believe he should have pronounced himself publicly on this matter, and whether he of course, coming from me, radically, I would have fired them immediately because I'm the appointing authority. But in the least, at least ask them to step aside. Let us see you as the driving...
Did you hear about the cabinet meeting on Monday and what transpired?
We always hear about those in rumors. I want action. I want a pronouncement immediately. Because I know that he is definitely not happy about this. I know he is. But I also believe that the political forces that play when things like this happen and stand in the way of stern action that would communicate. Because one of the things I would like to say, first of all, is that this year, one of the things that has made me happy is citizens' participation in conversations related to the governance of their country. Citizens have been very actively involved in different issues. For example, sharing evidence. Journalists and the media houses have been picking very key pieces of information that point towards a particular scandal. You saw the issue with the Entebbe airport scandal, NSSF, and then, you know, this issue of the iron sheets. Citizens in their various capacities, whether as journalists or just citizens, have been involved in these conversations. And you could see that everybody is interested in what the outcome is going to be. And now when we are in a place like that, you must give citizens the confidence that you're actually very serious and committed to fighting corruption. We are going to have these committees do their work, release reports, make recommendations, and then what? Nothing. You will find a case going to court, starts very well, dies there. Before you know it, there's going to be a new scandal, and we'll forget about the iron sheets, just like the NSSF one went and others went, and then we continue. It gives confidence to people who are thriving in corruption to continue to do so because they know nothing is going to be done. And what is even unfortunate is, especially when you're in a position of power and influence, that is the highest level, that's the highest honor you can have, to be a minister. But to be implicated in something like this and still continue to serve, admit, yes, they've admitted, I'm glad they have, but then you continue to serve with no.
Let me hear from Baguma Richard. This is Uganda. Resignation, resign is the recommendation, but no one is resigning.
I think you have to be very careful so that you don't set unpalatable precedents. So resigning might be setting unpalatable.
resigning to us is an unpalatable
you might be
precedent.
setting unpalatable precedents. So you have to be very careful not to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And there have been no tangible benefits in the previous times for those people who resign.
Who has resigned so far?
So the first person I always talk about, and I do that because I felt sorry in the subsequent time, looking at him on the street, and all the people were cheering him, abandoning him completely. It's called Zirutwa.
Was Zirutwa?
Yes, the man resigned on very strong grounds. And
but even I think others, like Chirunda Chivejinja, just stepped aside.
We are going to come to those ones. And he really suffered locally. That even when he came back to try and stand, the electorate didn't want to have anything to do with him.
I remember he attempted to run for the mayorship of
and dismally, performed dismally. So, you know, we speak as if we are not part of the community that has been the fertilizer for impunity. And that's I know you are going to call me Mr. Impunity again, but you see, we have fertilized.
It is in our DNA.
We have kujimusad impunity. So what we are reaping right now is what we have been fertilizing over the years. That the people who have resigned, the Honorable Chirunda Chivejinja, the Honorable Kahindo Tafi, nothing. And let me tell you how that plays out. That even the ones who get pushed out through censures and things have remained with the power to punish, quote unquote, the ones who championed pushing them out. So even the ones who would be pushing forcefully, they stand back and say, but what will be the consequences of my actions? Because for us in the public, we do not give clear signals to the action takers that your lack of action, or that's which are kind of an omission or whatever, but also your actions of rewarding the one whom we pushed out has consequences. The opportunity we usually have is when we are pushing back, or even when we vote, we return the ones who are supposed to have done wrong, and we punish those ones who were, I'm trying to pick the phrase she used, who were mature and whatever enough to say we are sorry, let's resign. So we give them wrong signals. We encourage impunity by our own way we behave. And so we must get to ourselves again and ask ourselves, how do we behave? How do we nurture and fertilize this process? So resigning might be counterproductive on the individuals who resign, because you'll be pushed out and there will be some way of rehabilitating you. That's usually what is happening, that you insist, you don't plant the seeds of resignation in people's minds, please don't behave by setting precedents, and then you will be left out a bit, but then you will be rehabilitated.
Does that relate to what happened in the cabinet meeting on Monday?
But what happened on Monday?
Is the president, grilling the culprits, and it stops there.
Perhaps also I wanted to ask my brother, because his argument is leaning more towards, being sympathetic to these people. How about the people who are affected by your actions?
I think
so in this case, do we mean that it is it is okay, we just, after these things have happened, people should not resign? Of course, they're not going to be prosecuted. They'll just admit and we move on to the next thing. Because for me, that is where the problem is.
Baguma, did she get you well?
No, she missed. No, you see,
he's being philosophical.
There is this thing about.
Of course, I get that.
There is also this thing about receiving messages because of where they are. You see, she already confessed that she's trying to manage. She's being very civil on television.
She's angry.
Yeah. For me, I have gone beyond the angry stage. That is where I was. And then, now, I started.
Accepted.
No. I say we need different approaches, because the one we should be looking at is not the minister to resign. No. We have had we have been in power for 37 years. And I think we have had 300 scandals. So,
And more yet to
so
come.
what is new? Why do we think? Because I was telling you when I was coming, I was saying, I am not going to be mabatted on this show. I am not going to be diverted like Mabati, like the speaker said, because this is diversionary. For me, where the discussion should be is on the appointing
Authority.
That is where
And I asked you,
The discussion
what do you
should
make
be-
of his reaction during that? I mean, reaction to the scandals in the cabinet meeting.
But what reaction? There is nothing new.
He grilled them.
Which one? Are they? You know grilling? What grilling means? Have you ever put anything on fire and grilling? Do you know how it comes out? Hey, this is. It's like he massaged them.
Really?
And he has been having. What do you call this thing where people go for massage?
Those are massage
spa.
parlors.
He has been having a spa for his people regarding corruption for all the 40 years. So why do you want to mabat me in this discussion?
Gerard, pick up from there.
By the way,
And
he has mentioned about the society fertilizing.
Briefly before you come in, because for you at least you have been assessing Parliament and you have read this report of NSSF.
Yes.
The reason, her defense, Betty Amongi, on the floor of Parliament, you know she's being pinned for the 6 billion. She said,
She was the whistleblower.
I was actually trying to implement the NSSF Act, which was passed recently, which was came into force recently. That is one. She said, I was not taking this money to my own benefit or interest. Anyway, would I have asked my husband to give me money to implement this law? 2, she said, I was actually a whistleblower in this case. I don't know what you make of that.
No, but
of that
you're
defense.
going to come in. But how can you have an inquiry about NSSF when the minister wrote that this started in Kapeka? And the inquiry does not include Kapeka. And you say you're being honest.
And
We are
actually-
fertilizing impunity.
And actually, she also said she has just come into office. All the evils of irregular contracts are they were there before her. So she shouldn't be pinned on a report that majorly has issues that were out. That happened when she was out of office. Start from there.
No, but
Do you feel
I
anything,
think,
Pastor, for
I think
for
she's
Betty
also
Amongi?
being dishonest because you know the money relating to 1.8 billion for corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
That money was shared between some board members, the trade unions, and a certain percentage went to the minister responsible. Yes. Only that I don't know why they are not overblowing it in the final report.
It is little.
Because maybe it is little, they opted to talk about the 6 billion. So if you look at everybody, including the one he has talked about, they all needed to be investigated. And I think I saw one MP, was it Semujunganda, who was saying that, why didn't we also summon the general here from Kapeka? Because they have quoted him, he has been, of course he was asking those questions. He was asking those
Just being
questions.
cheeky.
Maybe he was playing to the gallery, but that's what he was asking. And it's very similar to what you are questioning, that the investigation is not thorough, complete without that. He's mentioning the issue of fertilizing corruption as a society. I absolutely agree with him. For instance, on this matter, myself and a colleague, she's a sub-editor in the Vision Group, and I think she also handles a talk show on one of the TVs there, have been very strong on this issue of corruption. And also the issue now of vulgarizing Bamasaba. Bagisu as thieves because we have the two ministers.
There is the word there.
As Babefi.
Yeah, you guys are Babefi.
So, but there are leaders within the Misimba who are saying now it is Gerard, Nawire, and others who are fighting our children, but they think Museveni will appoint them because to them they see nothing wrong about what has happened. So, as a society, the IGG is struggling, that maybe she needs to work with the community, civil society to help her fight corruption. And I think our people need to be sensitized because corruption in all its forms is retrogressive to society. Okay? So he was talking about like how comes in the 2000 the Honorable Chirunda Chivei Jinja would accept and say, I was wrong to steal 2,000 liters of diesel and use them in the campaign in the Bugweri. So, and then he resigns and says, let me go home. Or Matthew Chikairi, when he was being got over influence peddling in privatization, he said, this is so embarrassing, I'm stepping aside to allow the process of investigation and so forth. But now people are just quiet because people no longer feel ashamed to steal. It is now attractive to steal. And I was looking at the beneficiaries list. I looked at the Honorable Gorobi, the Honorable Musasizi, the Honorable Matia Kasaija. They all come from finance. So was there a discussion that let's give them, so next time our budget, we receive more money quickly? Then you see the speaker saying that I found Mabati in my constituency. Is it because she presides over the appropriation?
She quips during the debate. Don't divert me.
Influence on the budget.
Don't Mabati.
Okay. We see the government chief whip. The government chief whip also receiving, and so they proceed, and then they name the prime minister who supervises the entire document. Exactly. So it raises questions. Out of 100,000 iron sheets, you are the first, the leaders, chosen carefully to share. Don't you see there is a driving force?
I
looking at the individuals and the offices.
I talked to one key member and vocal member in the civil society. And like you said, he comes from that region.
Yes.
The region you've talked about, your region. And he was saying that parliament has turned itself into a mob, they are doing this and that.
And let me tell you, even in our own civil society, he told you about, there are people who have double standards. And there are people with some CSOs in the sub-regions, sometimes they ask for money from these politicians to support their activities. So it doesn't matter, but I want to assure the citizens that this, at the end of the day, you will pay. Because if your MP, your representative, is around the parliament to solicit for bribes, where is this money coming from? It's your money from the taxes that you pay that's supposed to deliver the services.
But he makes, I think, a valid point. That parliament has become, over time, has become transactional.
Yes, it is.
And it also lacks the moral authority now to convict thieves. I don't know if you make sense of that.
No, but well, we agree that there are issues around the parliament, issues of integrity, allegations of bribery, and things like that. The first case you saw where an MP came up and said, we received 40 million bribes, and then the next time he was being investigated, and then later the leadership of parliament and the IG said, we have agreed and we have forgiven the person. So it looked so casual. If in countries where institutions are independent, like the FBI would now call it, where was this MP on such and such a day? Did he enter? The cameras around the Kololo would be checked to see if indeed he went there. Did he come back with a handbag load? Things like that.
Our time is running out, but there are messages coming in here. Good morning, guys. Thanks for the program. First, rest in peace to Justice Kenneth Keke. Now, on why ministers are not resigning, it's just bad manners, impunity, and lack of morals. If one knows they are innocent, they can't. Why can't they pave way for the investigations to take place? Then, if they are really found to be innocent, you come back to your office. Some of these guys think they are not believers. I'm just fed up with Parliament making decisions and the executive ignores them. Like, seriously, how do you throw out someone and they come back on the front bench? You continue with business as normal, and Parliament itself should become serious for once. Another assures you that she won't resign on the floor and you just move on normally. Really? Let's just do our own things and let those guys do their own business, because even if we try to do something, most of the time it doesn't make any serious impact on our side. God have mercy on us. It is Major Joel Chirinya Bukasa. Thank you so much. It was a bunch there and very, very on point. I am Abel Keru. My take on the corrupt ministers is what Mr. Baguma has said. What have we done in those that have resigned in the past? We have not showed that it is right. It is the right path to take. So my opinion is that the appointing authority should always take action where necessary rather than sweet talking these ministers. Thanks, Apollo, and the whole panel. Thank you so much, Abel Keru, for the message here. And our time is running out. I have only 3 minutes. The messages are very many here, but I'll share. Let's share all these 3 minutes, starting with the lady.
All right, thank you very much. I think at the heart of what we've discussed is really the will from the highest office of this nation, who is our president. I would like to see more action from him, because I know that his word supersedes. And I know that by now we recognize that corruption is an evil in our society, and it affects very many sectors within our society, and it has an impact on each one of us in one way or the other. And if the will to end it starts from that level, we have no choice but to fix it. I've seen him take stand positions on so many things, and his word has stood. And so the confidence that people drive to still stay on even after they've done something is because of that.
Okay.
So thank you very much for having us, and thanks to the viewers for the good messages and also for watching.
Thank you, Mercy. And Richard, 1 minute, actually not
No. Until the anger threshold of the citizens of this country is at the level where they are willing to face the threats and take action to liberate themselves, we shall remain with these conversations and actions. So we need, and we are not yet there. We are not yet angry adequately because we have the power. We have absolute power. I've talked about this. There are no guns or ammunition or whatever that can push back the wrath of the people. Okay. So as long as we are still dormant and accept to be part of the what do you call it, the wave, we will be paying the price like we are paying now.
Iraj, Doctor.
Your Excellency, you were quoted that you were asking the Deputy Attorney General that which crime should you charge these people with? Is it abuse of office or theft? And you also asked what Parliament was doing with investigating police cases. What should be police case? The country wants you to take action. If you don't, all the interventions you are doing are not going to bear any fruits.
Wow. Well, viewers, that's it from us here on the dialogue. My name is Simapolo. I must thank all of you there, our viewers. The messages are coming in, but we could not get time to read them out. I must thank Mercy Grace Mundulu. Thank you so much for being part of this program this morning, and we look forward to having you in that seat again.
And where have you been hiding her? Good ideas.
Thank you.
Yes, Richard, it's always a pleasure.
My pleasure too.
Doctor, it's always a pleasure having you on this show.
Thank you.
Well, from the production and all the people behind this program, we can all say thank you so much, and we'll be back next Saturday. Good afternoon and a good week ahead. Bye-bye.